Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and I'm here with special guest Professor Gumbo from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm retired in Mexico, if you're new to the channel, and we're going to discuss 1974 today. First, to let you know, I am on many other social media sites, so you can follow me on Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitter. And I've got a cat here that's mewing. I hope that he's not making too much noise. And anyway, I'm happy to have the professor here with us today. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. Yep. Just chilling and being retired.
We are going to count down our 10 favorite albums from 1974. And we're going to count them down in order from number 10 to number one. We're taking turns going first. So I will go first on this one. I want to warn you, Jim, I have 8 honorable mentions and I could have done 20.
You
Easy.
mentioned that. Yeah.
It's a loaded year and I really did pare it down to 8. But before we start, I like to give just a little context on the year. So let me just run through real quick some events that happened in 1974. One is that Patti Smith released a song called Hey Joe, and the Ramones played their first gig at CBGB's. So this is the advent of punk, although we did have some proto-punk with. I am going to put a cat out. I'm going to pause the video really quickly. Okay, sorry for the interruption there, but they were
Put the
making
cats
noise, and
out.
I know. Could you hear the cats?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
could.
But they were definitely distracting me. Also, George McRae released a song called Rock Your Baby. So the point of this is that punk and disco were starting to emerge in 1974. Really early proto, but the beginnings of punk and disco, which would really define the 70s. So music was changing. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac. So, of course, they would be megastars. Stephen King published his first novel, Carrie. This was the year we had the California Jam Festival, which was headlined by Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. That was a huge concert. In sports, Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run, breaking Babe Ruth's record. And that record stood for years until Barry Bonds broke it. The Heimlich maneuver was published that year. It's just a little tidbit. Uh, Big news, Nixon resigned. President of the United States resigned. So 74 was a big year. Ethiopian rule, which had been the same since 1270, ended when Haile Selassie was deposed by the Marxists and a civil war began in Ethiopia. The Rubik's Cube was invented. There were a lot of plane and train crashes. You know, safety has really improved. Music deaths included Duke Ellington, Mama Cass, and Nick Drake. And the most popular films, just some of them, were The Towering Inferno, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein. That's right. Mel Brooks' 2 best movies were released the same year, and Godfather Part 2. So that's just a little bit of context for that year. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to get started with my number 10 pick. And again, this was a tough year, but I'm going to go with Neil Young's On the Beach. Oh, and by the way, we're going to pick 2 songs from every album, and then we're going to make a Spotify playlist. We'll put the link down below. But On the Beach, interesting album because the following year was Tonight's the Night. But Tonight's the Night was actually recorded first, and then On the Beach was recorded afterwards, but was released first. So it's a little strange in the chronology of Neil Young, but this was a big deal because everyone was used to Harvest and the smooth acoustic sounds, and then he would come out with Zuma with Crazy Horse, and then On the Beach. Um, Iconic album cover with that Cadillac buried in the sand, showing you the picture right here with the umbrella on the beach and Neil Young photograph from behind. But it's kind of an eclectic collection of some songs kind of electric, some songs kind of acoustic, but definitely he was kind of doing that Dylan thing where he was trying to kind of tear down his old image and start a new style. And this would be him kind of returning to that grunge sound he had on the Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. Although the guitar is a little bit understated, but I love the songs on this album. And for my two picks, I'm going with Revolution Blues, which I guess David Crosby didn't like to perform live because it was so scary. It was about killing people in Laurel Canyon. It was inspired by Charles Manson. And when he didn't want to perform it, Neil Young said, according to Wikipedia, it's just a fucking song. But I think it's a misunderstood song that if people take it autobiographically, which it's not intended to be. But yeah, it's just that thing about I hear there's a lot of stars in Laurel Canyon and I'll kill them in their cars. And it's a frightening song, but it's also kind of a precursor to the modern era. And I like it. And then the closing track, Ambulance Blues, I'm going to go with that one. So that's my number 10 pick. Neil Young, On the Beach.
Okay, good one. I really considered putting that in mine, but it didn't make it. My number 10 is an album that it's easy to get in a different form than what I have it. In At the end of 1973, right at the very end in December, Lou Reed performed at the Academy of Music in New York, and that was released in '74 as Rock and Roll Animal. And then a year later, in '75, the rest of the show was released as Lou Reed Live. Okay, so both of those are from the same show, Rock and Roll Animal and Lou Reed Live. The I've always loved both of them, and some time ago I found a an import, might have been an unauthorized recording, but it's great sound that has all of the tracks. It's the whole show. Okay, so basically it's a two-disc set, and so it's called Lou Reed Academy of Music 21-12-73, and it's great that it's available like this because the two tracks, one's from Rock and Roll Animal and one's from Lou Reed Live. From Rock and Roll Animal, I'm choosing intro Sweet Jane, which was it took about half the song. About 5 minutes or so for Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner to switch off on their guitars, and I mean be playing back and forth with a twin guitar intro. And then you could tell when the audience starts to applaud, because that's when Lou comes strolling out onto the stage, and with his head almost shaved and heavily made up. This is Lou going full glam. And interestingly, Lou is a guitarist, but he doesn't play guitar here. He had two guitarists that were better than him. So he just takes the mic and he starts singing. And Sweet Jane is a song from Loaded, and it's one of the best songs from Loaded. And then the other track is one of Lou Reed's most famous songs, and this live version is Dynamite, and that is Walk on the Wild Side. And both of these albums are available through Spotify, just not available together. So that's Lou Reed, Academy of Music, 21-12-73, Intro Sweet Jane, and Walk on the Wild Side.
Wow. Okay. That's great. I don't know if I've listened to that, but I did listen to a radio broadcast from that time period. And that's also an excellent document, a tape from a radio show. Yeah, there were some great performances in. Wow. That is a surprise. So I'm looking forward to finding those images. And yeah, it's great. All right. So I'm going to go with my number nine. And I don't think this will surprise you, other than maybe the fact that it made my top 10 and not an honorable mention. But I'm going to go with number nine. I'm going to go with Graham Parsons' Grievous Angel, which I think is his best album. Now, I do like the Flying Burrito Brothers a lot, and but this is just a great document. His second album he did with Emmylou Harris, but he's got a bunch of Elvis people on here, like James Burton and Emery Gordy Jr. and the pedal steel player is what is his name? I was just looking it up today, but Crackerjack Band, and there's also a fake live concert on there, which is really good. And he combines the old Louvin Brothers song "Cash on the Barrelhead" with the Byrds song "Hickory Wind." He does them as a medley, and this is a great album. This is that cosmic American music that he dubbed. He would die, unfortunately, before the album was released. So this is a posthumous release, but it's just great country rock. This is, there was a lot of things going on like Linda Ronstadt and that type of thing at the time. But for my money, Graham Parsons' Grievous Angel is the best of that country rock period. And I'm going to go with the title track, Return of the Grievous Angel, and a song called Brass Buttons. And this is a acclaimed album. If you look at critical reviews, it almost every critic raves about it. So Grievous Angel by Graham Parsons.
All right. Next up on my number 8 is an album that I got right when it first came out on vinyl, and I've always loved the album. My favorite album by this artist, and it took me forever to find it available on CD. And my friend EJ was able to find it on download for me. So, I have it that way. But it is by Melanie, Melanie Safka, better known
Hmm.
just as Melanie. And the album is Madrugada. Uh, and I find it the absolute best Melanie album. It has a handful of her own songs, which are really good. But you know, Melanie is primarily, uh, I mean, she's known as a cover artist, but she also writes her own songs. So I chose one of each um, of her own songs. The opening track, "Love to Lose Again," and then the cover is. I've heard so many covers of this song, and to me, this is the absolute best version of the song, even better than the original. And that is uh, uh, "Wild Horses" by
Hmm.
the Rolling Stones, and the Flying Burrito Brothers did it, and lots of artists have done it. But Melanie's version of it is just really amazing, and it really builds up into a great thing. She almost scat sings, and then she goes and her voice squeaks. It's almost like a Van Morrison thing. But um, so "Love to Lose Again" and "Wild Horses" from Melanie's album Madrugada.
Well, I've never listened to that album, so I'm looking forward to those two tracks on the playlist. That's a big
It, al-
surprise.
it also has a great version of Jim Croce's Lover's Cross.
Wow. Huh. Melanie. Yeah, I knew you liked her. That's great to see her crack your top 10. All right, my number eight. This is going to be, I got a controversial statement to make about this. I think this is my favorite album by this band. And this is very controversial. This is the band, yes, progressive rock. I love the album Relayer. I like it as much as Close to the Edge, which would probably be pretty much tied for my other favorite. But Relayer is just an album that I love. And, you know, Bruford left Yes and went to King Crimson, and Alan White joined as drummer. And I think maybe that was a good move for both bands. I love Bruford and I love his drumming with Yes. But I think Bruford really found his niche with King Crimson, and Alan White's a great drummer. So, of course, Rick Wakeman had quit, and they got this guy named Patrick Moraz from Switzerland to do the keyboards. And as big a Rick Wakeman fan as I am, this last year on 1972, I know you had Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is an album I like a lot. I think Relayer is kind of a stepchild to that album. It has a lot of similarities, and it's only 3 tracks. Side one is The Gates of Delirium. And I love the transitions on here and the way they build up this war, this battle. They have a battle with their instruments. And during the song, I think it was Chris Squire who did this, but it might have been Alan White. They just knock over a rack of machine parts that they bought at an auto store. So it's got these ambient noises on it. And then the battle is over and it goes into this beautiful song called To Be Over. You were talking about how many great melodies are on Tales from Topographic Oceans. I think Relayer is the same. I think it's loaded with really great melodies. And so for my pick, I'm gonna go with the Steven Wilson remix, which broke the tracks down a little bit. I'm gonna go with Gates of Delirium parts 2 and 3 and call that 2 tracks. So yes, Relayer. Does that surprise you?
No, not at all. I think it impresses me. I didn't realize you liked the album that much. It's interesting that you called it the stepchild of Tales from Topographic Oceans because EJ and I have talked about how that could have been that Gates of Delirium could be the fifth movement of Tales from Topographic Oceans. But yeah, it's great. Now, on your excerpts, do you have Soon on there?
Um, oh, that's what I meant when I said To Be Over. I think
Uh-huh.
Soon is the coda of Gates of Delirium, right?
Yes, yes. And
And then
uh, Soon is the name of the song.
yeah, I actually forget, but I think To Be Over is on the second side. So I think Soon is Gates of Delirium Part 3. I think that is Soon.
Okay. All right. Well, getting into a little bit of Prague, and let's see, that was your number 8, right?
Hmm.
Okay. My number 8 is a band that you mentioned, King Crimson, Red. Now, Gene, I don't know if you remember, but you bought this album for me for my birthday.
Right.
Um, yeah, and it's still one of my favorite albums, a favorite King Crimson album, um, and maybe my favorite King Crimson album, even more than their debut, which is really a totally different band. On our last episode on 1973, you mentioned you're surprised that I didn't have Starless and Bible Black on there. Not Starless.
Clark's tongue. Yeah.
Lark's Tongue
Clark's
is an
tongue.
aspect. Yeah. But I saved it for this. And this is, uh, as many people believe, this is the beginnings of prog metal. Okay. And I remember when it first came out, King Crimson said, with a with three members, although he also cheats a little bit because he has some wins in there, but John Wetton on bass, Bill Bruford on percussion, and uh, Robert Fripp on guitar. He said he wanted to recreate the sound of heavy metal music as it was in 1973, 74. And he does a great job of it. This is the last King Crimson album until 1981. Okay, which when you look backwards, that doesn't seem like a lot of time. But when they reformed in 80 and put out their next album as a different band in 81, it really was a surprise. King Crimson has only had one member consistently, and that is Robert Fripp. And so he formed the band, and he picks and chooses who's going to be in it. Um, my favorite tracks from it, it's hard to choose, but uh, One More Red Nightmare, which has a really strange combination time signature uh, in the near the end, and then Starless and Bible Black at the end of side two. So the end of side one, the end of side two are the tracks that I chose.
Yeah, and you just mean Starless.
Starless, yeah, Starless.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to because that song was intended for Starless and Bible Black, and then it was
In the
bumped,
lyrics,
reworked.
in the lyrics, he sings Starless and Bible Black.
Right. It's no, great pick. I love that album, and it will remain to be seen if I've got it. It, yeah, and you were talking about time signatures. It's I just watched a reaction to the whole album on a new channel that I'm following by a guy named Walter. His channel is called Walter Ruski, so I'll give him a shout out. And he's actually lives in Phoenix, Arizona. So he's a young guy, and he pointed out something that maybe I knew but didn't really consciously think of. I probably knew subconsciously, but there are time signatures where Fripp is playing a different time signature than the rest of the band. So there'll be like two different time signatures going on at the same time. It's really kind of the beginnings of math rock in a way. It's yeah, it's a wonderful album. All right, my number seven now is I think this will please you greatly. Um, this is an almost perfect album. I think you'd be a little surprised that I stuck it up here at number seven. But I'm going to go with Richard and Linda Thompson. I want to see the bright lights tonight. I think I always thought like Shoot Out the Lights or whatever that album was called was my favorite album, but I think this is my new favorite. This is a really consistent group of songs. It's the first Richard and Linda Thompson album, and despite how consistent they were, I think this is the best. I think the debut is still my favorite. And uh, so for those of you who don't know, because they were a little bit bigger in England than America, so for American viewers here on the channel, they did a kind of they were an outgrowth of the British folk scene, I would say. So in America, you had Joan Baez and Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Dylan. You had the Folkies, but in England, you had Convention and Pentangle and Bert Jansch and Martin Carthy, and you had all these great British folk artists. And Richard Thompson was in that scene. He was a member of Fairport Convention. And then they kind of broke out and did this folk rock thing. But Richard Thompson's one of the best guitar players, and Linda Thompson has this beautiful, beautiful alto voice that I really love. And it's a great album. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Again, we'll put two songs from the playlist, but I'm going to go with the title track, I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight, which is a great song about people getting rowdy at bars and her loving it. And then I'm going to go with The Great Valerio, but it's really hard to pick two songs from here. But The Great Valerio is got a beautiful vocal by Linda Thompson. And yeah, that's my pick. I want to see the bright lights tonight.
Okay, great album, really a great album. As you know, I love Richard Thompson, and you even saw him with us one time, right? Yeah,
Twice.
twice. You saw him with us twice. Okay, so um, my number seven is a band that I discovered when I was a senior in high school. Makes sense because 74, 75 was my senior year in high school. And I heard this and I really liked it. It sounded kind of like Genesis, but a kind of a more pop version of Genesis, and then combined with the Kinks. And the reason why
Hmm.
is is because there are two singers, and there were two singers from the beginning, Roger Hodgson and Rick Davies. And so the album is their breakthrough album, Prime of the Century. Okay. Um, and so I you've got two songs, and I did not choose the song that I first heard by them, which is a Rick Davies song, "Bloody Well Right," but instead I'm choosing "School,"
Hmm.
which is primarily a Hodgson album, and the title track, "Crime of the Century," which is primarily a Rick Davies song.
Those
So
are great picks, and rest in peace to Rick Davies, who just died this year. And last year, I think Melanie died. So yeah, rest in peace, Rick Davies. He just died a couple months ago. You knew that, right?
no, I did not. I did not.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, Rick Davies passed away 6 or 8 weeks ago, I think, pretty recently. So yeah,
I didn't know about
thinking of
Melanie.
that.
Um, by the way, Melanie was my first female celebrity crush.
Okay.
Say first female because my first celebrity crush was Robert Plant.
Okay. Well, that's a great pick. I love that album. I absolutely love that album. My number six, now we're getting into my top six are albums that I all give 10.0 to. These to me are perfect albums that I wouldn't change a thing about. And number six is by Eno, Brian Eno, but it just said Eno on the album. He released two albums this year. And early in the year, he released Here Come the Warm Jets, but I prefer the second album, the sophomore album, Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. Every song on here is a winner to me. And there's a lot of humor on here and a lot of creativeness. There's a song on here where I remember thinking, I know that sound. What is that percussion sound? I know that sound. And one day it just hit me. It was a typewriter. He's playing a typewriter on one of the songs. This is just really, really creative. I'm a huge Brian Eno fan. And if you haven't heard this album, I think it's just great. It's so unorthodox. It's got so many left turns that you wouldn't expect, and interesting musicians, including Phil Manzanero from Roxy Music. I'm going to go, this is really tough, but I'm going to go with two songs. They're both a little up tempo, but I'm going to go with Third Uncle and The True Wheel. So Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. And you
The true
introduced me to Eno, by the way.
the you're welcome. Um, the True Wheel is where Manzanero's later band 801 got their name from. We are the
Correct.
801,
Thank you.
the central shaft. There's a song on side one that has whistling, slow whistling through it, a chorus of several people whistling. And what they're whistling is the Bridge Over River Kwai theme. Uh,
Oh, okay. That would be Back in Judy's Jungle, right?
yes, it is Back in Judy's Jungle.
Love that
Um,
song.
and oh, and yes, it's a great album. It really is. I can't believe I didn't put it on there, but it's because, like you, I have so many fantastic albums here. So my number six was an album that really spoke to me my senior year, and that is Jackson Browne's "Late for the Sky." Uh, I I like a couple of the earlier Jackson Browne albums also. A couple, there were only two, but this album, every single song had a place for in my heart, and I have since often said that if Joni Mitchell back in the mid 70s, if her music spoke to the disenfranchised women of the time, I think Jackson Browne's work did the same thing for men. I'm not saying only men liked him, but it spoke to men because he is a great singer and a great rocker when he wanted to be, but he had a sensitivity to him and he wasn't afraid to hide it. Um, so the songs that I chose from there are the title track, "Late for the Sky," which is no, not I'm not the title track. No, it's the last song on the album, uh, "Before the Deluge." Okay,
Yeah.
and "Before the Deluge" is um, is a song and a theme that a lot of people had on their mind at the time. So that was like it's sorry, I've got something in my throat here. But I love that song. I always have. But my favorite song from the album is "For a Dancer," which is a
Mhm.
song about death and dying and about what happens when we die and what happens when our friends die and how we cope with it and cope with grief. And it's a beautiful song. And was it, I'm trying to think, Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris, or was it Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton? I think it was with Emmylou Harris this time. They did a cover of it, but go for the original. "For a Dancer," uh, wonderful song about death, and it's on my it's on my death memorial uh, mix CD. So you know you'll have it there.
Right. Love that song. That's fantastic. All right. Now we're in the top five. My number five is Joni Mitchell, Court and Spark, an album that's easy to overlook. I have a number of favorite albums, and I tend not to think of this one, maybe because it's a little bit, feels a little bit slick or commercial. But, I played it for this project, and I'm thinking, that's a great album. It's just a great album, and the musicianship on there is top notch. Um, you've got Tom Scott's LA Express on there, and it's just a number of great session guitar players. I think Larry Carlton might be on there. I'm trying to think of all the Robin Ford, I think, is on there. You got some really great guitar, and of course her acoustic guitar. But the big hit on here was "Help Me," which is a wonderful song. Probably might be one of the first Joni Mitchell songs I ever heard because I was a little bit late to Joni Mitchell. I didn't hear the Blue album when it came out. So I remember hearing "Help Me" on the radio all the time, and that certainly would be a good pick for one of my two songs. But I'm going to go with "Free Man in Paris," and then a deep track called let me get the title of this right. It is called "Just Like This Train." So that's a deep track, but you could pick just about any song from this album. But those are my two picks. So Joni Mitchell, Court and Spark, great, great, really well produced, great album.
It really is. As a matter of fact, I had to delete it from my honorable mentions to fit another album in there because I kept my honorable mentions down to five each. By the way, I wanted to point out a personal thing to anybody who might be watching and who notices that Gene and I, you might say, well, if you love the album so much, why can't you remember the titles? Because we both, have a problem with this. One, we both know and love thousands of albums. Okay, thousands. It begins to pile up after a while. They, but the other thing is we're both freaking old. Okay, and so our memories sometimes slip a little bit. So just because Gene didn't remember the name of that, or I messed up on Starless and Bible Black. It doesn't mean that we don't know those songs really well. It just means we had little brain farts. Okay.
The best
Senior
analogy, oh, go ahead.
senior brain farts.
Well, the best analogy I heard, which really describes it, is is we have more floors to the library. Okay. So that information's on the 14th floor. Just let me take the elevator up there and I'll get it in a minute. But you're right, accumulated knowledge over the years. It's just there's more floors to the library. Anyway,
Absolutely.
go ahead.
Okay, my number five. This is, I in 1973, um, actually 1972, I said Cat Stevens' Catch a Bullet 4 is my favorite. And this one I think is Cindy's favorite, and it's also my friend Roxanne's favorite. Um, and it is many people's favorite Cat Stevens album, Buddha and the Chocolate Box. It's got a beautiful packaging and it's got great songs just from beginning to end. Um, why is it that it's not my absolute favorite? Only because there's a couple that I like more. It's a bit glossy in the production, but that doesn't matter. The songs are great. And so, what are my favorite songs from it? Well, one of them is a I guess it's a deep track. It certainly wasn't an album, a song that got a lot of radio play. It is Sun slash C79. Okay. And it's about a guy who is telling his children about how he and their mother met many years back, as she was a groupie and he was a rock star. And that's Sun C79. The other one is one of Cat's most beautiful ballads, King of Trees. And it's an acoustic folk ballad, and it's just chilling in how beautiful it is. So, Sun C79 and King of Trees from Cat Stevens, Buddha and the Chocolate Box.
Wow. Great, great pick. The I haven't listened to that album in a long time. I used to own it. We haven't had a lot of convergence, but I think that's going to change with my top four. I suspect my top four will all be in your top 10, starting with number four, which is David Bowie's Diamond Dogs. So last year I did not have Aladdin Sane on my list, an album I like a lot, but Diamond Dogs is an album that really polarizes people and polarizes critics. There's people who love this album and people who just go, eh. It really divides people. But in doing our David Bowie project, where we were going through our favorite David Bowie albums, if you want to check out that video, it's a 3-part series. It's on here. You can look it up. Diamond Dogs, I think, really holds together well as a concept album. It probably shouldn't on paper. There were a lot of problems with it. We talked in that video about how he couldn't get the rights to Orwell's material. But I think it just really works well. And this is the album where Bowie decided to be the guitar player, and he decided to be the producer, and then he called in Tony Visconti to mix it. And it's got a really sort of ragged sound, but it's aged well over the years. And it's kind of a precursor to some of the indie rock things that you hear today. And a lot of dark lyrics, so many good songs on here. And great, Herbie Flowers is the bass player on here. He's one of the best. Rest in peace. He just died early this year or last year. But Herbie Flowers, great, great bass player. You got, is it Alan Parker? Not the director, but a different Alan Parker who plays the kind of Isaac Hayes Shaft guitar on 1984, that sort of wah-wah guitar. Really good band. So I'm going to go with the songs Sweet Thing, Candidate, Sweet Thing, Reprise, and Rebel Rebel. I love Rebel Rebel. It's a great track, great lyrics. So Diamond Dogs at number four. That should please you.
It does very much. And you chose a couple really great tracks. So My number four is Todd Rundgren's Todd, the first Todd Rundgren album that I ever got. Cindy and I were listening to the radio. I still listened to the radio back then. That was something I don't really do much of anymore, because not because I have any particular hatred of the radio, but just because I have so much stuff of my own to play that you know there's and so it's a two record set. Those were big in those days. It's a double, and my favorite songs are uh, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because one is just a verbal intro, and that is "How About a Little Fanfare," and it moves right. It's a 57-second track that moves into "I Think You Know." So, "How About a Little Fanfare" and "I Think You Know." Um, and the next one would be uh, an amazing song by Todd, and that is "The Last Ride." And on "The Last Ride," Todd starts to layer electric guitars. And I think he has four playing it simultaneously, but it's all Todd playing them. So, "How About a Little Fanfare?" I think you know. And then we've got.
So my response to that is no, no, no. A little more humanity, please.
Yes, right at the end of "I Think You Know."
Or Spark
So
of Life, I think, right?
yeah, at the end of "Spark of Life,"
Oh, I
just
love Spark of Life.
before an LP's worth of tunes. Um, and so the last ride. So "I Think You Know" and "The Last Ride."
Great album. Love that album. Um, you made an interesting point too. I'll just digress very briefly. But one thing about streaming and Spotify and these things like that, a lot of people would say, what's the difference between Spotify and Pandora when Pandora was popular? And I always said, well, Spotify is the site you go to if you want to be your own DJ, because Pandora was more about an algorithm that would do a playlist for you. And we are both big fans of creating our own playlists. So I think one reason that we don't listen to the radio anymore is we've become our own DJs.
That's right. Good point.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. I'm the disc jockey now. All right. Number three. And you saw this tour, Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
I did. Yes, I did.
My favorite Genesis album, number one. I don't know if you knew that, but even though the story's a little dense and a little convoluted, it's still a great story, and Peter Gabriel's lyrics are so good. As a double album, it's really hard to pick two songs. Of course, this would be Gabriel's swan song. He would quit after this album, and we would end up having it ended up becoming, isn't it interesting that it seemed like a crisis at the time, like what's going to happen to Genesis? And both Gabriel and Genesis ended up being far more commercially successful separately than they did together, which is ironic because this is such a great period, this Gabriel period, Genesis. But the breakup actually launched careers for Phil Collins and Genesis and Peter Gabriel. Everybody was successful after the breakup. But before the breakup was this great concept album about Rael, Rael, this new Puerto Rican New Yorker who goes through all these fantasies and different things. And of course, it's kind of science fiction, but kind of metaphor. And it's just a great album. The two tracks that I'm going to pick are consecutive tracks on the album. One will not surprise you, the other will surprise you. I'm going to pick the Carpet Crawlers. And then my favorite song from the album, and this will really surprise people, my favorite song from the album is The Chamber of 32 Doors. I find that so emotional. And by the way, I One day when I was listening to the Flaming Lips, okay, this is going to sound like I'm digressing, but I was listening to Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, and I said, they remind me of somebody. Who is it? And then it hit me. It was The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Let me explain. It's that ability to capture pathos without being cringy. And I think Wayne Coyne must have been influenced by Genesis because he's the only other artist I've ever heard that can capture what Genesis captures on a song like this twofer, the Carpet Crawlers and Chamber of 32 Doors. Like you mentioned when you listen to Ziggy Stardust and Suffragette City, that you hear them as a twofer. I always hear Carpet Crawlers and the Chamber of 32 Doors as kind of a suite of two songs. And that whole thing about he's trying to find a way out of this chamber is I find it I find the pathos in that song to be really moving. But there's many great tracks on here. Certainly the title track and a lot of humorous ones. But Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, number 3.
Great, great choice. My number three, "Ow!" And in the death, as the last few corpses lay rotting on the slimy thoroughfare. David Bowie, Diamond Dogs. This was my first David Bowie album. I got it shortly after it came out in the summer of 74. Gene, you came over to my house and I played you some of it because I thought it was so damn good. And then that fall, Bowie was going to be performing at the Coliseum, Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And so I got tickets to go see him. And Cindy and I went to see him, and we were trying to guess what songs he would play first. And it was and the track list was pretty much set down with the David Bowie live album. But he was in the transition between the two tours. I mean, the two set lists that he was doing on that tour. But David Live captures the sound really well. Um, but I'm not talking about David Live. I'm talking about Diamond Dogs. It's science fiction, concept album, post-apocalyptic, all stuff that a high school senior to be would really be into. And to me, I had read 1984 3 years previously, but what really got me was the dystopian aspect of the whole thing. So you did an I totally agree with you on that three-part candidate. That's one of my favorite Bowie tracks. And my second favorite, although I love the song Rebel Rebel, is the opening track, Diamond Dogs. And it has so many great lyrics, some of which I didn't get until later on because he didn't include the lyrics in this one. When he says, Todd Browning freaks he was. Todd Browning did the movie Freaks. And he's comparing people to the Freaks, which explains the back cover and the front cover also. So I love that song, the title track, and Candidate, Sweet Thing, Candidate.
Wow. Well, that's not a surprise. I knew how much you because we just went through the Bowie thing, so I knew how much you loved that album. My number 2 is an album you've mentioned, and we've already talked about it extensively. You will only be surprised by its placement. You won't be surprised that I like this album, but it's King Crimson Red, my favorite King Crimson album, and one of my 3 or 4 favorite prog albums. Uh, I I adore this album. By the way, one word I'm not using in this recording. I was going back and editing our earlier videos, and I used the word fantastic a lot. So I've been kind of omitting it from this video. It's just one of those words I lean on, but such a great album. Oh my God. And Starless, which is one of my two song picks, could be my favorite prog song, like ever. But let me tell you first the other song I'm going with. I'm going to pick Red, but your pick was my second choice. So I'm going to go with the opening, the instrumental Red, which is just great Robert Fripp composition. But Starless, I want to talk briefly about the song Starless because it's so important to me. And the way I hear it is it's just this, it opens up with this beautiful John Wetton lyric, who's a pretty good lyricist, pretty good lyrics on Starless. And it's got just a nice melody, and then all of a sudden it shifts into that sort of solo bass, and Fripp begins to play one note over and over and over again, and then he changes key, and then you think he's going to change key, and he doesn't. He stays in the same key, and the tension of just D D D D D D D D D, it's just so tense. And then Bruford builds up the drums, and the tension builds to a point where you're like this. I mean, you're just like this. And then Mel Collins comes in with that free, and I think it's Collins. There's two sax players on here, but he comes in with that free jazz saxophone, and it just releases all the tension. And that sax solo is so cathartic and so wonderful. And then it comes back to the coda. I just think it's a perfect song. I absolutely love it. And King Crimson appeals to me, I guess, because of that kind of analytical math rock thing. Um, the song is just so well structured and arranged. So that's all I'm going to say. But King Crimson Red at number two.
Okay, that's a great one and a great description of Starless. My number two is almost tied for my favorite Genesis album. It's but I give pride of place to Selling England by the Pound because Selling England by the Pound is more classic Genesis. But this is,
Yeah.
as you say, a wonderful album, a phenomenal album. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And I remember when I got it, and it had been played on the radio at night. They played the whole album, and I taped it. But then I went and got the album, and Cindy came over to my house, and we sat down. And for this 90-minute album, we followed all the lyrics along as we went. Um, and it's a magical album, and I feel so blessed to have been able to go see them on their final Peter Gabriel tour. Didn't know it was final at the time, but it was in a Scottsdale Scottsdale Civic Center, and it wasn't a great venue, but it was a great performance. Gabriel was constantly changing costumes, including the famous Slipper Man where he plays a walking, talking venereal disease. And it's just it was, and then in between, about basically at every beginning of every side of the four sides of the album, Peter Gabriel would stop and tell the story of what's going on. Um, Classic Genesis lineup: Phil Collins on drums, Steve Hackett on guitars, Mike Rutherford on guitars and bass, and Tony Banks on keyboards. The ever cheerful Tony Banks. And it's a it's a powerful, powerful story, and hard to choose songs, but the two that I would choose are exactly the same two that you would choose, Gene. So do I get
Really?
to do I get to choose another one?
I'm shocked that you picked the Chamber of 32 Doors.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, you
Then
get to pick another one.
the title track, "The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway."
Okay.
Okay, so "The
So
Lamb Lies Down on Broadway," and then uh, "The Carpet Crawlers" and "The Chamber of 32 Doors."
wasn't that show at Phoenix Civic Plaza rather than Scottsdale Civic Plaza?
It might have been, but if I seem to remember that it was at Scottsdale. I'll
Yeah.
have to check.
Yeah, you
Um,
could be right.
and when it was over, they only did one encore. For the California show, they did "Watcher of the Skies" and the musical box. But for the show that we saw, the encore was the musical box. And Gabriel came out second half wearing the old man mask, looking very much like Phil Collins looks today. Um,
Oh, that's
he does. Just look at it. Um, and he starts, and he was wearing a black leotard, and he starts unzipping it, and he starts unzipping it, and he gets past his navel and just keeps going. And Cindy said, "More, more," and he gets it almost all the way down. And when he's saying, "Why don't you touch me now, 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 now," and the music builds to a climactic, no pun intended, explosion. And then there is and somebody, Gabriel or somebody, threw a piece of flash paper right in front of him. And we were right up near the front. We were like the second row. So we were nearly blinded. And then as soon as that's over, the lights come up, the band is gone, and the PA starts playing "That Old Man River Keeps a Rolling." And that was the show.
wow. Yeah, I'm jealous.
It
My
was
number
really,
one. Oh, go ahead.
oh, it was just really a fine show.
Yeah, I had a bootleg of, I think it was that show. It's called Blood on the
Yes,
Rooftops. Blood on the
it was.
Rooftops,
And you
or
recorded
Siren on the or something.
Blood on the Rooftops, I think it was called.
Is it? Well, it was a line from the album. It might have
Uh,
been something Siren. Anyway, it had a title that was one of the lyrics from the album. But yeah, I actually listened to a bootleg of that exact show, and it's great. Yeah, I did. I remember sending it to you. Number one, I think we're going to converge. I think we have the same number one. So for me, that's Van Morrison. It's Too Late to Stop Now. His double live album. This is Lightning in a Bottle. Van Morrison at the peak of his powers, and it's an album that was had no post production. It was they just let it fly the way it was recorded, the way I like to hear a live album, and I think that improves it. I think one reason it's such a great album is you can hear any flaws were left in. I prefer that. So you get the feeling that you're really there. It's excellently engineered with the audience being just the right. When you do a live album, you can do like Frampton Comes Alive, which is the audience is like another instrument. And then you hear soundboard recordings where you can hardly hear the audience at all. And this is one where the audience is kind of right in the middle. It's perfect. The recording is so clean. It's drawn from 3 shows, 2 in California and 1 in London. And it's fantastic. It's just one of the greatest live albums. All Music gives it 4.5, which is a lot for a live album because they always give live albums poor reviews. Considered a perfect live album by a lot of people's standards, and I agree. It's just a great run all the way through, and such a tasty choice of covers. Sonny Boy Williamson, Ray Charles, Bobby Blue Bland, Muddy Waters. It's got about 6 covers on it, and they're just excellently chosen, and they mix in perfectly with his originals. Great song selection. I read today, I didn't know this, that the band had a funeral for some of Van Morrison's songs, and they buried them and decided not to do them on this tour. I don't know which songs those were, but they had a funeral for some of Van Morrison's songs. And the idea was, we're not doing those songs on this tour. So what you're left with is just a great collection. And this was the Hard Nosed the Highway tour. Some of these live versions I think are even better than the Hard Nose the Highway studio album. My selections are a cover, Sonny Boy Williamson's Help Me, and the final track, Cypress Avenue, which is a great showcase for the band. The last thing I'll say is this Caledonia Soul Orchestra, this 11-piece band, has got to be one of the most nimble bands ever on record. Van would not do his songs the same each night, and the band was always there to respond to him. And if he was going to sing it differently, they would also play it differently. Great band, great band. Can't say enough about them.
All right. Well, you're not going to get any argument from me, except I made It's Too Late to Stop Now, volumes 1 through 4. A
Okay.
couple of years ago, Van released 3 more discs the uh, of It's Too Late to Stop Now from those tours. And being such a Van fan I am, I chose that as my number one. However, that said, I have lived with the first double record set, It's Too Late to Stop Now, for so long that it is embedded in my brain. And those are where I get my two choices from. Okay. Um, One of them is these are from that album, Gene. Um, and that would be Gloria, a cover of the Them, where Van channels James Brown. And then uh, same as you, Cypress Avenue. Um, I I just so both of those are songs from pre 1970, and there's so many to choose from. But if I were to choose one from the other albums, the other discs, I think it's from Volume 2. It would be Purple Heather.
Okay. Wow. So we did converge at the end,
Mhm.
but we had some different choices. I love it. And so we're going to go through our honorable mentions. And the professor is, I admire him. He's able to limit this to five. I got eight. I can't help it. They're just eight albums that I really love. And what I didn't put on here, I mean, I have albums like Before the Flood by Bob Dylan and the band that aren't even in my honorable mentions. I mean, it was such a deep year. So I'm going to go with the final album. I'm going to try to run these through quickly. The final album in the Radio Gnome trilogy, Gong You. It's just called You, Y-O-U. This is a great album. A little more meditative. By meditative, I mean meditation. A little more trippy than the other two albums. A little more serious musicianship. Love the album You by Gong. Supertramp, Crime of the Century. And the three songs you mentioned would be my three favorites: School, Bloody Well Right, and Crime of the Century. I can't believe I didn't get this album on my top 10 because this is my favorite Supertramp album. And they're a great band, but it was just that good of a year. Next one is Robert Wyatt, Rock Bottom. An interesting album because, and by the way, Robert Wyatt was played with Eno on Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy.
He played the typewriter,
Robert,
I think.
did he?
Yeah.
Robert Wyatt plays percussion, which is interesting because and keyboards because he wrote this album and then before he had a chance to record it, he fell out of a fourth-story window and became paralyzed for life. Robert Wyatt, by the way, is still alive and still making really good music. I'm a big Robert Wyatt fan. I love his voice, and Rock Bottom is as good as anything he's done. It's a terrific album, but I just couldn't get it in there. Next on my list is Todd by Todd Rundgren. Couldn't believe I didn't get that in my top 10 because I love this album, but it's an honorable mention. Next is Roxy Music, who's been making my lists, my top 10 every year, but Country Life just fell out of the top 10. It's a great album, but in that first run, in that run of the first five albums, it is comparatively speaking my least favorite, but it's still a 4.5 star album. I love Country Life, and Manzanera is really prominent on this album. Songs like Prairie Rose, it's a great album. Roxy Music, Country Life. I'm going to go ahead and put the album cover on here. I hope it doesn't get the video blocked because it's a pretty racy album cover. Next, Big Star by their album Radio City, which was their second album. A little bit more Alex Chilton dominated because Chris Bell was easing out of the band, but this has September Girls and all these classic Big Star tracks. Love it. My next choice is Jackson Browne, Late for the Sky. Agree with you. It's a wonderful album. I think it's Jackson Browne's best album.
I
My
agree.
favorite song by my favorite song by him is The Pretender, but that's an uneven album. And I think Late for the Sky, song for song, is his most consistent. Would have liked to get it in my top 10. And then finally, Van Morrison released two albums this year, so I've got Veed and Fleece as my last honorable mention.
All right. Well, some of mine are in there too. Some things that you mentioned. My honorable mentions: Bob Dylan and the band Before the Flood. It was a comeback for both Bob and for the band, and it led into what was to become Bob's, in my opinion, greatest period, the late 74 through 1976, Blood on the Tracks Desire period. Next will be the other album that you got me at the same time you got me, Red, John Cale's Fear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my favorite John Cale album, with both Brian Eno and Phil Manzanera and Chris Spedding, and just great, uh, great musicianship, great singing, great writing. The next one was an album that Cindy played for me, and I really got into it, and that was Electric Light Orchestra's El Dorado. Uh,
Mm.
you know, um, I I'm not a huge ELO fan, but there's a couple albums by them that I really love, and this is one of them. And it's kind of musically a concept album. And then Richard and Linda Thompson's "I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight." And if I were to be choosing a track from it, it would be uh, Cavalry Cross, um, which is a has some of my favorite guitar playing by Richard
Yeah.
Thompson. And then Van Morrison's Veed and Fleece, which is Van kind of trying to return to a more mature version of Astral Weeks.
That is that's a killer honorable mention list. It must have been painful to leave those five out.
It was, on Veed and Fleece, there's something because I think was it Cindy or someone else? I think it was Cindy who said it, and I just can never hear it differently now. It's Who Was That Mask Man? And Van sings in falsetto, and Cindy said, he sounds like Curly of the Three Stooges.
Oh,
Oh,
yuck, 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 yuck. Oh my God.
uh,
Well, I hope she meant that as a compliment, but
all right.
well, this is
Oh, need to talk about the ones we've seen.
yeah, so great list. So we've been through some of these would be repeats, but I've seen Van Morrison twice, 99 and then on his country music tour. I did see Jackson Browne one time at Mesa Amphitheater. It was a great show. Um, it would have been in the 90s, I think. So it was a little bit after his heyday, but live he was great. Roxy Music, the one time, the Avalon tour, Todd Rundgren six times. I mentioned that I've saw David Allen of Gong. I never saw a Gong, but I saw David Allen. Horrible show, but I got to see him. I've seen Neil Young with Crazy Horse twice, 87 And then in 1990, I've seen Yes once on the Tormato tour. Never saw Richard and Linda Thompson, but Richard Thompson twice, both times with the professor. So one was at a outdoor festival that included Crowded House and Meat Puppets and Para Ubu. That was a good show. And then we got to see Richard Thompson at the Rhythm Room in Phoenix, Arizona, which was great. It was a club show. So both times that we saw Richard Thompson, or I saw Richard Thompson, was him unplugged without a band. Um, I've seen Bowie 4 times. I never got to see Joni Mitchell. She's number one on my bucket list. Genesis, I saw twice in the Phil Collins era. And then you may not, I don't know if you know this, Jim, but I've actually seen Jim. I'm sorry, I called you Jim because Jim changed his name to Jim. It's a long story. But anyway, I've seen King Crimson twice. So I saw the Discipline tour with Blue, Bruford, Levin, and Fripp at Grady Gamage. That was a great show. And then later I saw them on the, I think it was the Thrack tour, but it's when they were a 6 piece. So yeah, I've seen King Crimson twice. That's it.
Okay. I saw Lou Reed in 1976 at Celebrity Theater. Put on a really great show. The encores were mostly Velvet Underground songs. Never saw Melanie. I never saw King Crimson per se, but I saw what was much like them, UK, John Wetton and Bill Bruford, and so that was similar. Saw Supertramp at the
Oh, really?
Veterans Memorial Coliseum on the Breakfast in America tour.
Wow.
It was great. Never saw Jackson Browne live or Cat Stevens. Todd Rundgren a couple times. I've told the story of that. Diamond Dogs, David Bowie. Seen David Bowie 4 times. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, as we talked about. I've seen that one. I also have seen Genesis uh, at Post Gabriel once, and then Van Morrison 4 times.
Well, great.
Oh,
I really
and
enjoyed this. There were some surprises, I think, this time around. So I appreciate, yeah, this was fun. I appreciate your joining me on the channel. Stay tuned for our next recording, Jim. And you got any words of goodbye?
goodbye, goodbye,
We say
goodbye.
here in, as we say here in Bonita, Mexico, buen dia.